Alright, this is Big Boss at Foxhound Woodsball, coming to you from Fort Lauderdale and from my blog page over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. I'm also repping the guys from Acid Tactical. You can check them out over at acidtactical.com. Anyway, this is going to be what we're going to call the sew shop videos. Basically, DIY projects that you can take up on your own, minimum equipment. Sometimes you don't even need a sewing machine. No, if you got a sewing machine, fucking use it, alright? Because some of the best stuff that some of these players can see in the field are usually custom work. And keep in mind, this is before Kydex was even a big thing back then in the ejection molding for holsters. What I've got here is the holster for the Tippmann TiPX pistol. TiPX, I don't know what that really means, but that everyone calls it the TiPX, TiPX, TiPX pistol, but this has pretty much been the standard for Tippmann as far as their mag fed for years. This was the first mag fed that Tippmann really did that was modern and successful. But we're not talking about the pistol, we're talking about the holster. Now, you guys know that the holster was pretty much set up to be ambidextrous. You could use it on the drop leg. I've screwed around with various configurations over the years, but this definitely had its drawbacks that I will be discussing later on in the video, but I digress from right now. Time moved on. I got into more tactical stuff. I started switching out my equipment. Got big into Round 4 stuff. So you can definitely say I've expanded a little bit. This is one of their large pistol holsters. I accidentally got this in their 3-color desert when I was looking for their what they call 8-color desert, which is multicam, but I digress. There's enough tan in here to work well. Solid holster, very tough, will serve a player very well, though this has some issues as well. It's mainly a drop leg platform and is only set up as a drop leg platform, as your Tippmann holster is more flexible and versatile. However, this has a serious story behind it, which led me to do some very serious modification work. And this holster right here is what I've worked on. This is my TiPX holster, though, as you can see, very heavily modified. I'm going to show you everything I did to this thing. And this is stuff that just about anybody can get their hands on. I'll run you through how I did it. But this also has some very serious inspiration behind it. Namely, the United States military M12 holster, which was produced by Bianchi as the UM-84, their Universal Military Model 1984 holster system. I'm going to be talking about the M12 holster and how it influenced the TiPX holster, as well as a few models for other firearms on the market. But first, a word from our friends and sponsors over at Acid Tactical, so you can check them out over at acidtactical.com. We'll be back right after this.
The Tippmann TiPX holster is probably one of the most flexible holsters you can get your hands on when you first get into tactical paintball running secondary markers like a pistol. Now, I've used this for years. I've experimented with it over the years. And some of the stuff like right here, experimented with it as a shoulder holster system that you would see with the U.S. military M7 shoulder holster rig. I've experimented with it mounted to a vest system. I used the Alice Tamale adapter, just ran it straight through. Let me pop the picture in on this one right here. As you can see, this was not very practical, but it worked for what it was intended for, but it had room for improvement. I rigged it up to be a leg vest or belt mounted system, as you can see here, but where did this idea come from? It would be this particular holster here. This is a Bianchi UM84 holster. It was adopted by the U.S. military as the M12 used for the M9 service pistol from Beretta, but it could also fit a 1911 as well in similar sized pistols. Now, they've used this as a complete system. As you can see here, this is used as a quick draw with the thumb brake system on here, but it was also set up to be run on a drop leg, as pictured here with the initial leg extender, though some guys managed to customize it to a little something like this one here, with the two leg straps and the quick disconnect at the top, though I like the design on this in all honesty, though. It also came with options like the shoulder holster rig, though it was a love-hate relationship on this particular one from what I hear. Then you've got the M13 chest rig system. Holster was designed to be completely ambidextrous, and this has been something that has been somewhat of an inspiration for more modern holsters like this Molly one here that is pictured. Needless to say, for a holster like this, then you definitely think versatility.
Okay, now I got both TiPX holsters set up here. The one right here is going to be your standard configuration, and right over here is going to be the custom work that I've personally done on it. Being my personal holster, I'm going to go through every piece of what I did to make this more tactically capable. Now, let's first start off with the main issue I have with the TiPX holster. This damn thumb strap on here. Now, keep in mind, this is good for keeping good retention, but the main problem with having a strap like this is pretty much your draw time. Now, this is just like if you've got a full cover flap on a holster. You don't exactly get the best draw times for something like this. For me, if I was in wide open areas where I could easily jump behind cover, this wouldn't really be a problem. But at the field I usually frequented, it became pretty fast paced, and if you're operating in the CQB house, then definitely you'd have to have this thing preset in order to be effective. So what I would have to do was actually unsnap the holster and keep my gun as is without any security on there. So that means I'd be very mindful about how I moved and how aggressively I moved within a structure. Otherwise, I could easily have this gun fly out of the holster and I'd be out a couple $100s. Now, for that particular issue, I actually used the Bianchi International thumb brake system off their UM84 system. Thankfully, the security straps that would strap into the mounting matrix of the holster actually are the same size as the snaps used on the TiPX holster, so snapping this part in was pretty easy. The real problem is in the back. where I'd have to use the special piece, well, the mounting clip from the UM84 holster. I'll explain that a little later to actually mount this part. But if you're using this without the UM84 holster clip that would mount to the belt, you could still do this by running paracord or shock cord through the loops on the holster that would enable you to do the drop legs. So you've got that option. And the good thing about this is it is nice and secure. I can easily get my pistol holstered and easily get this thing secured. Bear in mind, right now I'm using this one-handed, so it's a little difficult. The thing is that where the thumb brake is, it's got that nice hard plastic here to enable you just to unhook it real fast and get the gun out when you need to. That is the first part of my upgrade package that I did for this, though I'm considering down the line trying to find just the flap part for the M12 holster, just to see if I could mod it onto this holster just for shits and giggles. Now, the other big problem I had was flipping it over, the leg straps. This is pretty much all it is. It's just nylon webbing that's got Velcro on it, and another like elastic strap here to keep excess material from falling out. But as you can see, definitely something that's just there. You wrap it around tight. You can't get an easy, fast on-off if you need to. So that's been a huge problem for me. My solution, 2-inch wide nylon webbing. As you can see, got it rigged up to a tri-glide, so that way I could have a better adjustment on here and keep it locked in. So if you've got to cut this yourself, best recommendation is that you burn the edges of what you just cut, so that way the ends don't get frayed real bad. As you can see, bought the 2-inch wide buckles. You can get these on Amazon for a good amount of money for a small pack of them. That is rigged right into the holster itself. As you can see, moved it over. Now it's woven into the leg straps of the holster, so that way it's a secure fit around my leg. And with that, let's move on to the other part, the suspension system. Now, this right here is essentially the suspension system for the TiPX holster. It's just a nylon strap with Velcro that wraps around the loops for the leg straps on the holster and just snaps into place. That's it. It's no adjustment, no anything like that. I, on the other hand, decided to make the adjustment system so that way I have something I can easily operate with. Give me 1 second to strip this down. I'll explain it from there. Okay, now I'm back. I've got the entire thing stripped down a little bit. Now, let's move this part to the side real quick. And let's discuss my mounting system. Now, this is kind of inspired by the military's leg extender that allowed the M12 holster to be a drop leg. You got the 2 strands of webbing here, which allow you to mount it. Now, I use this purely as an optional matter when I initially cooked up the design for this because I was planning to use this thing. This is my attempt at an Alice belt adapter that would run through the belt loops on here on the holster where you'd do the leg straps to mount this to an Alice belt. Now, something like this would be sold by companies like Brigade Quartermaster, US Cav. They had something like that for years as a Alice adapter to make things like knife sheaths and stuff like that compatible with your Alice belt. But this also allows it to take that same thing and adapt it to Molly gear too if you put something like this onto an Alice to Molly adapter. But I digress. Let's get this out of the way. Now, with this particular system, I designed it with the intent to be able to secure into the holster, but also have the means for a quick, easy disconnect, or if I need to transport the holster separately from the belt or vest system, I could actually do that by disengaging the quick release buckle, which I also made myself. I had to actually slap some Velcro on here, and I still got to stitch this down, but other than that, this part wraps around a GI issue pistol belt, and then I could actually clip this thing in as a drop leg. I also wanted to make it adjustable to allow me to use different types of equipment belts or gear rigs. So with that being said, I could extend this or tighten it up onto the belt if I'm running a BDU belt, if I'm running the military issue pistol belts with this kit on a drop leg, I can actually do that now. But as far as actual mounting goes, I decided to modify a little something. I managed to go on eBay and find this. This is the hardest thing to this particular build to find. This is the belt clip system used by the UM84/M12 pistol holster. Now, you got the pinch clip system in here. This is to keep the thing hooked in place without the leg straps, and just this clip system. I can actually run this on a military issue pistol belt as a hip mount. But I digress. Let me show you how I set this thing up. Got it. Okay, now opening this thing up, this is where I've got the thing set up so that way it makes it easier to use the thumb brake. But take the pistol out. Now, how this thing is held in place is with Velcro, apparently. Take a strip of Velcro. I had to stitch one end of the Velcro onto this 2-inch wide nylon. And then I just glued and stitched down the Velcro here onto the metal mounting clip. As you can see right here, this thing is actually stitched in pretty damn good. Now, with that being said, slide it into the belt loop, fold this part over, wrap it around, and now, even if I don't have the leg straps, I could still work with this holster as a actual mount for a belt. I could actually run this on a military issue pistol belt. I could run this on a regular civilian belt, BDU belt, and I can even adapt it too for various thumb brakes and strap systems. All it is this ring system that you see right here. So with that being said, you can practically change out your retention system to keep your gun in place from a flap system to a drop to a thumb brake like this. This is where all your options come into play. Now, you could probably use the full nylon flap from the M12 holster on this, but you still have to modify it how to secure in place. But the thumb brake actually works pretty damn good, so you've got plenty of options on that one. Alright, YouTube, that completes our look at the modifications I did for the Tippmann TiPX holster. If you guys like what you're seeing, hit that like button, share this around, subscribe if you want to see the written version of this. Check out my blog page over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. And if you guys are looking for cool molly kit, or you need some accessories for your paintball gun, airsoft gun, or your real steel firearms, don't forget to check out my friends over at acidtactical.com. And remember, when the shit hits the fan, you've got to trust your gear with your life. Ask yourself this one question: can your gear survive the acid test? And don't forget, Outer Heaven Paintball and Acid Tactical both are on Teespring. Check them out too. Links are in the description to this video. And with that, this is Big Boss, and I'm out of here.